Okay, I'm going to call our meeting to order. Today is August 30th, 2022. This is a business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee, and I'd ask for a motion to recess to executive session for the purposes pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42464 for a discussion of job performance, character, or physical or mental health of a person or persons, provided that such person or persons affected have been notified in advance and advised they may require that the discussion be held in an open meeting pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1. Sessions pertaining to potential litigation and legal advice pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A2, and discussion of any investigative proceedings regarding allegations of misconduct, civil or criminal, pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A4. If I could have a motion to that effect.
So moved.
So a motion from Ms. Hildebrand, second from Ms. Lima. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So we're in executive session, expected to return at about 7 o'clock tonight. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's 7 p.m., so I'm going to call our meeting to order. Today is August 30th, 2022. This is a business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. I'd ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Blasbach?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mrs. Lima? Here. Mrs. Schott?
Thank you. And if you could please call the calendars.
The next two business meetings on our calendar are Tuesday, September 6th and Tuesday, September 20th.
Thank you very much. Any presentations or recognitions? Mr. Waterman?
Done.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to recognize and make a comment and introduce an attorney here. So just to point out, because there have been a lot of questions about this really kind of all over the place, so want to clarify some things. The North Kingstown School Committee is represented by a law firm, which is the firm of Hennius, Carroll, and Lombardo, LLC, and that has not changed. There are multiple attorneys employed by that firm, and the school committee and the school department have always worked with many of them on various matters. And we've been working lately and closely with attorney Andrew Hennius from the firm on a number of matters, and we've asked the firm if we could continue to work more closely with him, and he's here with us this evening. There are many ongoing legal matters that attorney Marianne Carroll will be continuing to work on for the school committee and school department. So I just wanted to clarify that because there's been a lot of stuff floating out around there with respect to that. So the next item on our agenda are citizens' comments. We do have a sign-up sheet, so if you haven't signed up already and would like to speak, please do so. And I'd ask, as always, if everyone could please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We'd appreciate that as well, so that everyone is treated fairly. So I see one more person signing up, and then I'll have the list collected. Okay, first is Susannah Tingly. And again, as always, if you could please state your name and full address, including the town, for the record, so that we have that. Hold on, I'm not sure if that mic is on. Can you just check it? It doesn't sound like it is. Sorry, I just want to make sure it gets picked up for you.
Good evening.
That's better. Yep, thanks.
Okay. Hi, Susannah Tingly, 750 Hatchery Road. I just have a few comments on tonight's agenda. On page 57, the 3 professional days have been added to the district calendar to accommodate the Right to Read Act training. And I was just wondering, was there consideration of whether this instruction affects all staff? And with the new calendar, families need to schedule childcare for 3 different kind of random days. Was there any alternative programming or community input considered? Or how about consecutive professional days, perhaps for a February vacation or a long weekend? On page 72, it's listed that the new Hamilton principal was hired using ESSER and general funds, and I don't know if that's an error or if that's intentional. But I question why we would pay for a structural position with one-time money. My understanding is that's not an intended use of ESSER funds. And I encourage you to postpone the appointment of a school committee member to the Jamestown Contract Negotiating Committee until you have a full school committee. This contract may have an enormous impact on revenue for the district, and it deserves the full committee's attention. Next, I was wondering, will there be an exit interview for Mr. Mather? I know the DEI discussed the importance of exit interviews, and I think it would be helpful for school committee candidates and the town to understand why he resigned. And lastly, I understand the equity audit of our schools in town is underway. During a recent DEI meeting, it was discussed that student surveys need school committee approval, but employee and community surveys do not. but I believe by your own policy, the DEI is an advisory committee, and all the surveys need school committee approval prior to them being sent out. So I'd ask you to please address the need for approval for all the surveys prior to them being sent out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Karen Kuzminski.
Good evening. Karen Kuzminski, 22 Matola Drive, North Kingstown. So I was just really curious. I attended the last meeting when we had the interviews for the superintendent, and I really wonder what happened between the last interview and when you decided we were going to start with a clean slate, because I really felt like the second person that interviewed had a lot of experience. He was warm. He just seemed to have everything that I would think we'd be looking for in a superintendent. He was actually even inspiring to me. I was almost excited to get to know him. So I just was curious. I would like to know the parameters that you're looking for. If none of those finalists had anything that we, as a finalist that you would vote for as our superintendent, I was just curious, what is it that we are looking for if they didn't have what we are looking for? So I don't know if there could be a conversation, if you could just candidly maybe talk about that. And also, I was curious about the resignation of Jake Mather, if that had anything to do with us not appointing not having a superintendent from that meeting. So just very curious about that process. I would like to know that who we select is really about the children and it's not political. So don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I would be very disappointed if that were the case, that it was political and we weren't looking at the best interest of our kids. So, and I did hear that, good for Don Cowart got promoted to superintendent in his district after that interview. So I feel like, yay for Coventry, but too bad for us. I feel like we might have missed the boat on that. So just my 2 cents on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Pam Panero.
Pam Panero, 710 Slocum Road. I'm just a concerned parent. I have 2 kids in the school system, and my concerns are the following. I'm concerned that we have no permanent leadership. Nothing against the interim leadership, but I think we need some permanent leadership in the NK district. I'm concerned that the third candidate made it to the finals, although he had very credentialed background. He came from there was gray in his history. He left his last district. It wasn't hard to find that out. And I don't think NK needs anything that is not clear-cut, or we don't need anything that would leave anyone to have questions. And so I was surprised that he made it to the final candidate slate. I'm concerned that there's no teacher contract. I'm concerned that the new calendar is shortening the school year by 3 days. We're coming out of a pandemic where there's learning loss is a huge thing, and we have 3 less days on the calendar. I also think it's concerning that there's 3 more random days for working parents to have to deal with kind of last minute here. Those are my concerns. I'm just looking for some leadership, some reassurance that my kids are going to continue to get a good, strong education here in NK. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Crystal Simus.
So I want to make sure that we...
Sorry, if you could just state your name and address. Yep, sorry.
Sorry. Crystal Simons, 55 Collinsport on North Kingstown. So I just want to make sure that we are laser focused on finding a permanent interim superintendent, at least for the end of the, going into this school year, actually. It starts next week. Because these kids, our district, our teachers, our students, we need more stability. And we don't have that. And we're lacking that leadership right now. And no disrespect, But when you have people working multiple roles and multiple jobs, things get overseen. And that might not seem like a big deal to you, but it is to parents and it is to kids. And this personally affected my family with something because something was overseen, because I think people are just doing too many things at once. We only have 24 hours in a day. So you need to have specific people doing specific things, and we don't have that. My other major concern is, yes, I'm a person that is a huge advocate for Don Cowart. I work with him. I've worked with him for many years. He is a great guy, and the fact that he just got promoted to superintendent, it was bittersweet for me. It was bittersweet because I'm going to be teaching. I've been teaching 20 years. I'll be teaching God knows how many more. At this rate, 25 at least. But my point is, I would have loved him to have come here because I think my kids need that opportunity for that leadership. And I am concerned that who is going to want to interview to be the superintendent here when they were put on such a public platform and they were humiliated because you're saying they weren't the fit, they weren't good enough. Like, what were you looking for? So what person is going to want to come here and put themselves out there, not just to our community, but the news, to their own district? Like, that is a huge concern. I don't know who would want to come here. So there's that. My other concerns are that if we don't have a permanent interim superintendent soon, then we won't have, I'm assuming you're going to be putting things like teacher contracts on hold. That's a problem. I have not spoken to any North Kingstown teachers, but I just know, again, I've been in the industry for a very long time. If there's no contract, there is a chance that they could go work to rule. And if they do, that's not good for anybody. The teachers certainly don't want to do that. Nobody wants that. And again, that affects our kids. There are no clubs. These things don't happen. Nobody wants to do that. My daughter's engineering teacher stays after school with them for hours working on projects. They won't be able to do that. They're going to miss out on extra help, on things that these kids need, especially your MTSS kids. They need those extra supports that teachers do that they don't get paid to do, that they do because they love their job and they love the kids. So I think that's important. And again, I just think that we need to come together as a community now. What's done has been done, unfortunately.
So I need you to please wrap up.
Okay,
Thank you.
but we need to move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jordan Albanese.
Hello, Jordan Albanese, 109 Mount View Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I'm going to sound like a broken record. The 3 days added to the calendar, the potential calendar or the proposed calendar, really concerns me. The last thing we want to do is take students out of the classroom for 3 additional days. They've already been through, learning at home, like hybrid schedules. We don't want any learning loss, and these 3 days are pure learning loss. They're not even at-home learning days. My understanding is that for RIDE to approve these days as PD days, all of us have to do the right to read training, even if we've already met our allocated hours. So I have to do 10 hours of not proficiency, but awareness, and I'm already at 4. I know other people are high. Well, I'm at like almost 8, but other people are either halfway done with it or closer to being done with it. And for us to just repeat the training over and over and over and over and over again for those 3 days, because it has to be allocated to right to read, is truly a waste of professional development time that we could use for many other more positive things, but also just a waste to taxpayer dollars. So I threw a figure at you guys. I know you all received my email. If you read it, it's like $300,000 for those 3 days. Just please reconsider extending the contract with Ames to be 3 years. I do appreciate all that you do, though, so thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, that's the last person that I have signed up. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Sorry. So you can come to the mic. Thank you.
Jim McGuinn, 412 Chimney Rock. Sorry I was late coming. I had a prior engagement. The issue has been transparency and openness of the school committee, the school department. I believe that the lack of transparency is a petri dish for abuse. We've seen all kinds of abuse. Moving forward, something that could be done very easily by this group is that MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with the town. The town finance director cannot even see the general ledger. He has to sign off on your audit. He has to sign off on all of your state aid for housing, bonds and whatnot. He can't even see the GEL. Not change it, just see it. He has to hire an outside audit firm to look at it and then give him a representation. It's ludicrous. The person who pushed for it and the person who signed it have both had to leave the district. The town finance director and the finance office of the school department, they can get together and use generally accepted accounting practices. Period. That needs to go. You need to start changing the attitude around here. Did you know about Ms. King's triple dipping? You gave her $600 a day because she was going to be doing all this extra work. She had to leave. She was the one who let the magical white box go that Mr. Thomas had, that apparently had student records. That's a FERPA violation. And a hard drive. She had to leave, but in that 70 days, you gave her $600 a day. And did you know at the same time that someone, maybe not, but your former counsel for the school committee, not the administration, by the way, pitched her to do consulting in that 70-day period in Foster Gloucester. And she had to be, based on what she was doing, had to be working during the day. So she was getting the highest paid salary at the time in North Kingston, higher than the town manager, plus another $42,000, plus she was working someplace else. Now, did you know? I don't think you did. And in Judge McGurl's report, page 36, both Marion Carroll and Mary King said, you didn't know about the sexual abuse of kids. Those people knew. Why didn't they tell you? Why didn't you tell the parents? And the last thing I bring up is, what counseling has been given to the kids in relation to this? Mr. Oliverio's first report in June of
I'd have to ask you to please wrap up, sir.
2021 recommended counseling. His second report in Judge McGurl's report. Has that organization been engaged to give these kids counseling? You need to do something about that.
Again, I have to ask you to wrap up, please. Thank you.
And focus on kids.
Thank you. So that is the last person that I believe wants to speak. So we'll continue on with our agenda. So next item would be the superintendent's report. So I'll turn things over to Mr. Waterman.
Yes, thank you. As everyone is aware, and a few have mentioned tonight, 2 weeks ago the school committee interviewed 3 candidates for the position of superintendent, and the school committee did not select one of the 3 finalists, leaving the district in a position without a permanent solution. Tonight I'm announcing my desire to step down from the role of interim superintendent and to assume the role of chief operating officer, for which I was appointed in June. In this new role, I'll oversee the technology, child nutrition, facilities, and transportation departments, and also act as the school department liaison to the police and fire departments for the safety and security of our buildings. I've asked and the school committee has agreed to appoint an interim superintendent for the remainder of the school year, and they'll conduct a search for a new superintendent on a more traditional timeline later this winter into next spring. The position of interim superintendent will be posted on School Spring, and the school committee will conduct interviews after the candidates have been screened. When I accepted this position as interim superintendent in March, I knew it would only be temporary, and I'm eager to assume the responsibilities of my new position. I will continue in this role until a new interim superintendent is in place, and I'd like everyone to know it's been a privilege and an honor in this capacity. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to sort of add on to that. So I want to thank you again for volunteering to serve in the capacity that you've been doing and that you'll continue doing. As Mr. Waterman had mentioned, we've advertised for the position, and we will conduct interviews for a longer-term interim superintendent. And we're going to continue on with the search process for a full-time superintendent. A lot of what the plan is to continue on with any members of the search committee that we had appointed who are able to continue to stay on that. We would encourage them to do so. And we're going to continue to work with NESDEC on that. And one thing to understand for the public, because there have been a lot of questions about this that I've seen as well, is that the agreement that we have with them specifically provided that in the event that we did not select a candidate from the first round of candidates they brought forward, that they conduct a second round of searches at no additional charge to the district. So there is no additional charge for having them going out and repeating the process, which is what we're going to be doing. So thank you, and then on with your back to school update.
Back to school. So today the schools have reopened, with today being the first day back, and probably the most exciting day of the year when we announce our Educational Support Professional of the Year. And the Teacher of the Year. So I'd like to congratulate Mr. Charles Pazanko on being selected the Educational Support Professional of the Year, and those of you who are a regular attendee at these meetings, Chaz as he goes by, he's the tall guy with the red hair that sometimes is down here running the microphone. So he's our Educational Support Professional of the Year. And our Teacher of the Year goes to a middle school Spanish teacher, foreign language teacher, who's split between two schools. Mr. David Aubin was announced as the North Kingstown Teacher of the Year. So congratulations to both of them. Thank you. So just so everyone's aware, and I think most parents have these dates circled, but school resumes for students in grades 1 through 9 on Tuesday, September 6th. Excuse me. With pre-K and K orientation also scheduled for the 6th. And then on Wednesday, June 7th, all grades will be in session. And
September, not June, sir.
Have I already fast-forwarded to the end? My apologies. I have something in my throat, as you can tell, and it's gotten in my head. So I'm gonna hit rewind on that. So school resumes for all students on September 6th, Tuesday, September 6th, for grades 1 through 9, with pre-K and K orientation also scheduled for that day. And then on Wednesday, and it does say June here, Wednesday, September 7th, all grades will be in session. I reported this today, and I'm happy to report that we are able to reopen schools under the same conditions in which we ended the school year. Outside of the clinic areas, masks will not be required. All of the cafeterias are reopened, and there aren't any limitations on transportation. If conditions change in the future, we may need to revisit our strategies and follow Department of Health guidelines. However, I am hopeful and confident that the worst is behind us.
Thank you. So on our agenda, next items are routine items. So I need a motion to seal the executive session minutes of August 30th, 2022.
Second.
Sorry, I was looking at something else. Who was the motion from? Okay. Ms. Hoskins, second. Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session. Are there any items any members would like to exempt from the consent agenda? Okay. Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion from Ms. Lima.
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? Yes.
I would just like to say, is this on? Yes.
Yeah. If it's a specific item, we should exempt it because you're discussing the entire
then
consent
I would
agenda.
like to
All right. So let's back up.
Okay, let's
so
back
can
up.
we have unanimous consent to withdraw the motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay. So which item did you want to exempt?
D2.
D2. Okay. So let's now have a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items. Oops, sorry. Okay. D1 also. All right. D1 and D2. Now, anything else? Okay. A motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items. Motion from Ms. Lima.
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand. We're going to give our clerks a heart attack when they rewind and try to do this again. Thank you, sorry. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The non-exempted items pass unanimously. So the first one is D1. Ms. Hoskins, you asked to exempt it, but if we could start with a motion to approve it so we can discuss it. I have a motion from Ms. Lima to approve D1, a second from Ms. Hildebrand. Ms. Hoskins.
Now, the grant for this is for Forest Park only, correct?
Correct.
Can you just explain what it is and go through it a little bit?
So this is a pilot program. So RIDE invited districts to pilot it with one of the schools. The library media specialist in that school really has a passion for this topic. They applied in the spring of 21. It was a 2-year rollout. Half the schools rolled out last school year. We're rolling out this school year. But I do believe, and I'm going to look at Interim Superintendent Kathy Sapala, I do believe the training is going to be offered to the other library media specialists. They just didn't get the technology grant. But with I know the platform that they're using has evolved and would also be available on the Chromebooks as well. But there's something, this is also part of a research program, so they're using a specific version of the app.
Now, will they give you information on sort of how they're assessing it to see if it's good or if we should be implementing it in other schools?
So it's kind of a mutually beneficial in that they are the research company is looking at how the students are performing on the app. So they're using the students' performance to gauge readiness. What was the question?
Just whether we'll get that information so then we can evaluate whether or not it's something we...
So there's nothing that there's no information. So if this is a direction in which we would want to go, we would determine how much is it written into the curriculum, the scope and sequence for the younger grades, because this is also specific to the very youngest grades, K to 2. So it would just be expanded upon in the other schools. But what we'd have to evaluate is, for example,
reassess how effective it is.
That and what digital tools are actually required. So when we wrote the grant, we didn't have touchscreen Chromebooks in our kindergarten classrooms like we do now. So we'd have to assess, are the touchscreen Chromebooks as viable as the iPads? But it's a specific iOS app for the purpose of this research.
Any other questions? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. We'll call a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next is D2. If I could get a motion to approve D2s, so we have something to talk about. A motion from Ms. Lima.
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand. So Ms. Lima, you had a question or a comment?
I just want to say that I am so excited to see this on here. At the administrative retreat, there were so many attendees there who had spoken so positively about having attended this in some way, shape, or form, and they all spoke about the importance of bringing this to NK, so I'm so excited to see that all the teachers at QUID, plus the specialists and the TAs are going to be able to take advantage of this, and I just am really happy that we are able to do this, and I'm hopeful that eventually we'll be able to roll this out to all the schools in the district, so thank you for making this possible.
Thank you.
On that
Yep.
consultants board, are they local or are they from Florida? Because the program's from Florida, right? Or local? They're local.
If you're gonna, you're welcome to answer the question, but no one can hear you unless you talk at the microphone. I'm sorry. Yep.
I'm going to turn it over to Lydia. Lydia Hanhart is the Title I coordinator for the district. And as this is paid for by Title I funds, she knows a lot about this particular program. So do I. But I'm going to turn it over to Lydia first, and then I'll be happy to follow other questions.
Yeah, so Loving Guidance, the organization that provides the conscious discipline, can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Training, the coaches who have been identified are local, so there's no transportation or any related costs. It's just the work that they'll be doing with the teachers and other staff at the school. And there are folks who we're familiar with and are excellent at what they do.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
Yep.
Three of us are sharing. We're sharing one mic. I I think this is great too. I'm super excited about it. I know a little bit about conscious discipline trainings as well. I know that we're rolling it out for QUID, and I think that that's great. Encourage us to be a little bit creative and see if there's a way to also do it for the pre-K classrooms in Fishing Cove. All of our RI pre-K programs across the state that are funded by the state, by RIDE, they're all getting trained on conscious discipline, and so it would put us in a good position in the future if we are able to ever access additional funding by the state, that our teachers in our pre-K program would be already trained. So I don't know if there's any way to be creative with it, but if there is, that would be really great.
I think there is. Isn't there something that they're doing at the, it's not the same thing, but it's along the same basics, right? What was it, the PALS for Owls or something like that?
Well, I'm going to go to the first part of the question first. RIDE is offering quite a bit of training. So we've seen that in the commissioner's memos. So we can hitch on to that. It would be a small team, but that's how QUID started. They started with a small group of interested teachers who went and got trained and brought it back. And that's where you really get that momentum. So we'll look into that. And Ms. Lima, you said...
I thought that they talked about that they're doing something at the pre-K, and it wasn't called conscious discipline, but it was along the same. They talked about, remember the chaos corner or whatever
exactly.
It was called?
So Jackie DiLorenzo was talking about that and the training that they have. A related training. There are a lot of social emotional learning programs that are closely related. Conscious discipline, however, is probably the premier right now, that state of the art. So definitely I will talk with them about if there's an opportunity to send a small team, let's get on it, and that would be terrific. And just to go back to the CS4RI that you were talking about before, we are having all of our librarians this year, in year 2 of the grant, be totally trained. So they will receive professional development time and dollars, but no equipment. So that's a really good way to spread that throughout the district, too.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? If not, we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So that's the end of the consent agenda. Next item is a school committee approval of the LearnZillion 6-8 digital platform. If I could have a motion to approve that item.
So moved.
A motion from Ms. Hildebrand. And a second from Ms. Lima. Any discussion? Okay. Mr. Waterman, or one of you, could just just for the public, quick explanation of what those are.
This is the digital component to our EL curriculum. It is an annual service renewal. So this platform was selected a couple of years ago, and this is just this year's renewal.
Thank you. So all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, this one I think we have a lot of questions on. So, but let's start with a motion. If I could get a motion to approve the revised school calendar as proposed.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand. Do I have a second? I will second it. Okay, so discussion. There's lots. So, and I want to thank our interim assistant superintendent for being here, because I know a lot of us have questions on this one. So, anyone want to start? Ms. Lima.
Shocker. So I just want to go in favor, on the record and say I'm not in favor of this. I am not in favor of taking 3 days of instructional time away from our students in order to support professional development for Right to Read. I understand that we are trying to do this in 2 years when the state has allowed us an additional year to do it. I understand that NK is a high-performing district. I understand there's a benefit to getting this done in 2 years, but I think that there are cons to trying to do it on the 2-year timeline when we have 3 years to get it done in. The current schedule, like Mr. Albernes said, and I think one of the other commenters pointed it out, the 3 days would be mandated for all of the teachers to have the same training, even if they need it or not. So that is basically requiring them to do training that they don't need to do. There are other areas that our district sorely needs to have professional development in. We have an additional year to get this Right to Read training in, and I think that we shouldn't be trying to get it done in 2 years when we can get it done in 3. And, I think there are other areas. My biggest concern is, obviously the loss of learning time in the classroom, the wrench that it throws into the schedule for parents. It's very odd days, in there. It is an additional childcare. And we do need professional development in other areas. We need it in sexual harassment training. We need it in implicit bias. We're going to need it in the Trauma-Informed Schools Care Act that's coming down the pike. And this will not give us any time to do it. And we're even still struggling, like Dr. Carson said, to get the professional training that the ESS people are contractually required to provide us. So why we are trying to cram this in 2 years when we can do it in 3, I'm not sure.
So, I mean, I also, I received a number of emails sort of asking the same sorts of questions. So I really would like to hear the rationale behind doing it this way and what alternatives were looked at and, what alternatives might there be to taking a full 3 days out of the calendar, because it isn't something that I think we should do lightly. So, the more information that we can have, the better I think we can all understand, and the public can understand as well why we're choosing this particular path of implementing this. So,
I'm going to go back to the original Right to Read plan, which when I first came here in the spring, we were actively meeting with the union to come to a balance for how the training would happen. And at that time, our proposal was to pay the affected teachers so that, as Mr. Albanar said, it would not have affected the awareness level teachers as significantly as it affects the total immersion teachers. So awareness level teachers had 10 hours and total immersion teachers had 30 hours, and all of the work was expected to be done out of school. Therefore, it was paid at the contractual rate. Even working that plan took a lot of took many meetings, because frankly the teacher leadership that met with us, it was not easy for them to just say, sure, pay us. The value of time was very important to them. And so while we thought we had an agreement first for a complete payout of those hours, we worked backwards and found ways to utilize staff meetings for some of those times and common planning for some of those times, and we worked a revised schedule that had pay and time. But in those meetings, the teachers talked about time throughout. They valued the time for their professional work to be done during the school day as much as possible. Now, we were satisfied with that final arrangement, and we had carved it out in handshake agreement at the end of May. But we all knew that there was something brewing at the State House. We've known it for 2 years, didn't know that it would really pass. And in the very late hours of the last week of June, it did. We didn't have official notification from RIDE, though, until July 28th. Then when they let districts know that here's the law that's passed, and here's what you can now work towards, please submit us a new calendar. And in that particular memorandum, well, it was a memorandum, it was an email. We got a short email. It reminded us that they had to be asynchronous days, that you could not do virtual learning and count it as a school day other than one day. So we quickly met with the union 3 or 4 times, all virtual, not 3 or 4, I'm going to go back, 2 times virtually, and once through an email kind of an exchange. I'm quite sure I understood very clearly from the union that they did not wish to entertain any pay, and that they wanted clearly to have the time to do it, the time that the law provided. So we switched gears and went towards using the 3 days that were allowed in the law. And now you can ask me some questions about that, but then I'll describe to you why we selected the particular days that we did.
But the law allows for 3 years, and we're trying to cram it into 2. Why aren't we taking advantage of that 3rd year?
So, Jen, excuse me, Ms.
I know,
Lima.
and you were wonderful when you explained all this to me, and I understand that we're a high-performing district and that we should be able to get it done in 2, and there's a benefit to getting it done in 2 for our students. But I also think we have we have the 3 years to get it done. Why are we not trying to stretch it out so that we can capitalize on the other things that also need to be taken care of?
So you would support more PD days, though?
I would support more PD days that do not take away from instructional time.
Okay.
So I do not support them in this current year, no.
Not in this year. So when you say 3 years, you say that idea that you have of 3 years is to have no training this year?
It's to not add those 3 days now. It's to stick with whatever the schedule was before RIDE, look at that additional year that RIDE allows us and figure out how we can extend the training out through that additional year.
But I'm going to say that, to me, based on what the union has told us thus far, would be no training this year. When you say extended...
Don't you already have training factored in, though, in some areas?
We did, but it was with pay. It was some professional time during meetings, but that was a limited part of it. It's 27 hours for this year. And so when you look at staff meetings, we were able to carve out 7 from that. And that would probably allow, there are 3 modules, that would probably allow 1 module to be done.
Yeah, I mean, with putting that additional year on the table, can you go back and have this discussion? Have you actually had the conversation with them about if we extend this out for 3 years, what does that look like?
I have not had that conversation with them. Jody Clark has done most of that negotiating with Ames because it was done actually Dr. Manzeri
and I understand it's a
Jody
2-year
did.
contract with Ames, but have we had the conversation with Ames about extending that contract by another year?
I don't believe we have.
Okay.
But I'm saying that even if we do, I just want everyone to understand, extending the contract by a year, we probably would get 1 module done this year in the faculty meeting concept that we talked about, because it's broken into 3 sections. Each module might be around 10 hours, in that vicinity. So we could use that model we had, which was faculty meeting, common planning time. That wasn't an ideal model either, but we might get 1 of our 6 modules done.
Does it have to be 3 days? Can it be 1?
That's another model that we certainly could consider. So that if we do a combination of what I just described, faculty meetings, common planning from 1 module, 1 professional day for a 2nd module. The ideal is 3 per year. Of course, we'll sit down and talk, but we have a deadline, a time frame of 1 of our modules has to be ready. Teachers have to be ready for a September, the last week of September. That's why a date was chosen there for a community of practice, which is a live training that goes on with some people from other districts as well. It's quite booked. It was booked, I believe, last year.
And who set that deadline? RIDE set that deadline?
No, Ames Institute that we
so that's
worked
why
with
I'm
to
saying,
create
I think we
it.
need to go back with Ames and have a conversation with them about the contract, because I don't want to feel forced into deciding our schedule based on a contract with a vendor.
No, of course we'll do that, but I can't guarantee that we'll come out with something because there are they have so many contracts with so many districts.
Understood, but at least I think we need to have the conversation with them.
And a question I have, just so that I completely understand it, and so let me back up, and I apologize. We're very much, I know, putting you on the spot here. And what we're seeing is this is a brand new requirement that came out of nowhere over, a very short period of time. And as a district, we're scrambling effectively to follow this statute that the General Assembly sprung on school districts across Rhode Island. So that's what we're stuck working with a surprisingly little amount of time. I don't take changing a school calendar this late in the game lightly, and that's why I have concerns as well. I mean, are there options to take we're putting this many days in there, any possibility of spreading it out over time and keeping maybe adding one additional PD day rather than putting them all now?
So looking at the reasons we selected the months we did is because of the required community of practice. There is one in September, one in January, and one in March. So we created the time for teachers to do their module just before those 3. I would honestly say that probably the most important one to do is the September one, and giving us the time to work on the January-March issues and those two community of practices and finding a way to work on that. But I think canceling September would be our biggest problem because we couldn't then get started. And we are not the only district looking at this, and these contractual dates were set a year ago.
But for parents in the district who are potentially looking at having to take an unplanned day off in, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that's an issue.
With total, I share your frustration with that. I share the frustration of finding out from Riot on the 28th of July that this was the case and sitting down around it. All of those things are hard for all of us. I would agree.
100%. And like Greg said, I understand we're putting you on the spot, but I guess my frustration is it does not have to be September 13th. It does not have to be that date. That is an ideal date based on some timeline that we've arbitrarily laid out.
Well, it's based on the timeline that all of our teachers have to have that community of practice, and there are particular dates in September, so you have to have that work done before that.
But that's based on the contract with Ames, correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But that's my point. So it's not based on a statutory requirement or anything like that. It's based on our contract. So
yeah, we're working with the statute, what the teachers union said that they wished us to do, the contract, all of those things. We value instructional time for children, absolutely positively. But I do mean what I said in my memo to you, that there is a great value to this particular training that will bring a high level of instruction in reading in a consistent way. I'm not saying it's equal, but I'm saying that is part of a trade-off. And I do have to admit, we have known this was coming. We've been watching this for 2 years, but the changes that allowed the 3 days was quite surprising. There's no question about that was quite a last-minute thing. So, committee, I come to answer your questions, and I don't feel put on the spot. Don't worry about it. I may not have been involved in the negotiations for Ames, but I have to be fully apprised of all this information. And I'm just tying that September piece to the first community of practice, which happens for everybody early in the time. If we could do that one, I really do believe we could have some time to work on the rest of the year's program, and that would help us with our negotiations. A little bit of time. So I would ask you that if we could perhaps keep the September to get it started, to give us that time. But we can pick. We picked a date in the last week of September so that everyone would have their work completed before they have their first community of practice, which is, and I checked the schedules today, so just give me 1 sec. It's the next week. They have to have it done by October 5th, I think. So I'm here to take back what you would like us to do. I cannot promise that Ames Webb will make a change for us. May have to come back to you again. You do have a meeting next week, so we can be back at the table next week.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Mike.
I guess I'm trying to figure out what to do in this point and what our plan B is. But I think just to clarify, what you're saying is you would encourage us to keep that September 27th date, but perhaps the other 2 dates decide at a later date whether we're going to use those as professional development or allow you to be creative with scheduling.
With using faculty meeting.
Right.
Using common planning time. But I'll tell you that, and when we did that and went to the nth degree of that, there was still an amount of money that we were going to pay teachers.
Yep. Right.
And at the time, they were not willing to accept. They accepted it in May. They wanted us to honor the legislation when we met this summer.
So there's a lot of unknowns for us at this point. It's really hard to make a decision. We don't know if Ames is going to be able to make any modifications.
That's correct.
We don't know what the union would like to do with payment and common planning time, and that has to be a conversations with them.
Well, they've had that conversation,
and they're telling you no.
They said time. Now, if any of you are persuasive enough to work with them and continue to have that conversation, We've told them that we have certainly would love 180 days, but we did give them that gift of time, frankly, when they met with us this summer virtually.
And did you point blank ask them if you were able to extend it a third year, would they be willing to go into that third year?
No, we did not.
Okay, so that's something that needs to be
And
addressed
that's
as well.
another thing, another kind of unknown.
However, they did say, Ms. Lima, we want the 3 days that are granted here. They said that part. but-
I understand, but I think like there are too many unknowns. I think the biggest thing that needs to be answered is whether the contract with Ames has any movability, extendability, because if it can't be extended and that we're locked into 2 years, then there's no really discussion around.
So can we approve just one day in September, and then
Could you put your mic on there?
are we able to amend it to approve one day in September and then discuss whether or not you add days later on after more
We
discussion?
could, and that's what I would be inclined to do, for the simple reason that we are talking about less than a month, less than a month. So parents need finality. We can't be, and it's bad enough to say, we might add some days in January, might add some days in March, but at least that's a while from now. But we can't be, I do not think, tabling this for a week is an option to come back next week.
No, I'm just
We
wondering
can't
if we
do that.
amended
So yes,
I meant coming back to you with the information
with more
from
information,
Ainsworth.
yes.
Right,
So,
Absolutely,
and then
positively.
if you can extend the contract into that third year, then maybe it's only one day each year.
right.
instead
So,
of
I mean, I
28 days.
really...
And that we use what I described, staff meeting, COP, and hopefully some issuance of pay for the compensated time outside of the school day. We were willing and have the ESSER funds to do that. I did not take a hardcore position on that this summer, however, because of this and because the teachers' union said so. But no model other than a pay model would deal with the issue that Mr. Albanese brought up, the difference between awareness and full implementation.
Okay.
May I hop in real quick and correct me if I'm wrong, but any reduction to the 180 day, whether it's 1 day, 2 day, or 3 days, those days cannot be distance learning.
Right.
And those days must be spent on right to read. If you don't have actual training to do, actual hours to do, you have to plan for implementation of how you would use what you trained in your coursework. So the idea that somebody would have to keep repeating the same training over and over again.
No, it would take, the director of curriculum will have to be planning some more individualized, grade level, content level reading training. It's not simple and easy, but she would have to do that on those 3 dates anyway, whatever those days are.
And I know when I was involved in the conversations back in May, we were operating under both ESSER funds and general budget funds that we had allocated to pay for this training. We had ESSER funds for year 2 and operating budget for year 1. So the funding is there. The money is there to pay teachers for the time. So it's not an issue of money. And anybody who's ever heard me speak knows I value the days of instruction. In fact, I've spoken up at my own kids' school committee meetings on the value of days in school. So I do agree there, and it doesn't come lightly to reduce the days.
The one thing I do want to correct, Mike, is that from the RIDE piece, every district was allowed, when you submitted your calendar last spring or last winter, to have one asynchronous learning day on your calendar. So I would say that while that is not in this email from the Commissioner's Office or RIDE, I think you could apply that if necessary. But as a district, you were not adopting asynchronous days after having, not the greatest experience with that in the past. I would concur with that. And the only reason I'm saying September is that we could get at least the first module done and make some plans for how to do second and third, but we would absolutely need the cooperation of the union to accept pay in the outside of the school. I cannot guarantee that would be the situation.
So what I would say...
But if that's not the situation,
okay, one at a time, though.
then we
Ms. Lima.
revisit
Because I'd say this for this reason. To do one module and then not do the next two and put them off to next year is not a good learning mode either. My goal would be to be able to do this year's worth of work in alternate ways. Otherwise, I'm not sure that it would be worth starting one module. So while I asked you for the module in September, because I had some confidence that we would then work something with a combination of time and money, as I reflect and speak out loud, I'm not positive that I could guarantee that. So in that way, I would be worried about one module and not the other two. So I understand your confusion about it, and I don't want to appear confused. It's a very complex situation.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
Pushed down on us. We had it figured out in May. We had it figured out for this district.
So I just have two quick questions. One to clarify. So if you have a teacher who only needs to have the awareness level and they have their 10 hours or whatever, so when they go into that day one of the 3 days, if we mandated 3 days of PD and they have their 10 hours, what are they doing?
Well, that's what I said. The director of curriculum will have to be planning some pretty high-level literacy work for them to be involved that relates to their content area or other grade level related.
So this is going to come
literacy.
out the wrong way, but I'm going to say it anyway. So in reality, it's training that is over and above what they need, correct? Because they only need to be aware. They've already satisfied their 10 hours of requirement, and that person is now doing PD over and above what's mandated for their subject area by the state, correct?
I'm not positive about that, and I'd love to see the RIDE regulations, because after legislation is passed, it's RIDE's job to do regulations, to give us guidance.
Okay.
This one isn't anywhere near handing to us. So that question, those are the questions that superintendents and assistant supes are asking all over the state right now. You're telling us we have to spend all of this time on right to read, even awareness. Does that really make sense? Those kinds of questions lead to the regulations and the ideas for guidance.
And when do you expect those regulations to come through?
They're working on them. We'll get them at some point.
So that's concerning also.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
It
and
is.
then my other question is,
Welcome to RIDE.
let's say that we say we're going to vote for the day at the end of September, and then this whole agreement falls apart and we don't have a module to train. That day cannot be used for anything other than right to read, correct? If we approve this and then we do not go through with the Ames Institute piece? No, if something happens and we realize that, well, we're not going to be able to make the risks work, and so it doesn't make sense to do the one module now,
We wouldn't have a PD day. What we would do is have an instructional day. And so that doesn't make sense for families to do a day and not do a day. It doesn't.
So Mr. Waterman wants to jump in because he has some additional information.
So I received a message while this conversation was going on from Jody Clark, who's our director of curriculum. Ames does not have a 3-year program. So what we would have to do is the modification to our contract, as I would see it, would be we would have to punt it 1 year.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I did not do the contract, so I wasn't involved in that detail.
So they offer 1- and 2-year contracts. So our request to Ames would be to push it back.
How are the other, and I know NK is different and we're exceptional, but how are the other districts handling this?
Many of them are paying their teachers,
Okay.
like we were.
Okay.
Some of them started last year.
Okay, so here's where I think, we could talk about this for hours, but I think here's where I'm landing, and I just from the conversation, I think we might be on the same page here. So there's a lot of information that we still don't have at this moment, but I think that we do need to, I don't see any way around the September 27th date. I think that's a day that we need to have in place, though I am absolutely not in favor of trading days off for this. I just really don't see any way that we can do it at this point in time, and I frankly blame that on the legislature for passing legislation that has this dramatic of an effect on our calendar and this district at such a last minute, and not very happy about that, but it's done. So what I would say we should do is that we should approve the modification of the calendar to add the PD day on the 27th. That gives clarity for parents. Parents have to know that. It's already late to tell them, but it's the best we've been able to do at this point. And then come back as quickly as possible with potential alternate plans. And if not, we may have to adopt this calendar as we see it now, or another plan, one or the other. But it would buy us a little bit of time to come up with something.
So, honestly, the piece of information that Mike just told us, that we have only a 2-year option with Ames, is very important for us to consider as we decide if we're going forward or not. I really wonder about doing one module and then leaving it. And that's what I think I'm hearing from the committee.
Well, no, I think I'm willing to commit to the 27th. I just want to have there are so many questions that we still have.
Or someone to go back to the table with the union and see if they can work something out. If not, they will be back. And we'll vote on those other 2 days.
We'll set that meeting up this week. So that's the piece we've got to come back here. I think that's the glaring question.
Yep.
There's no question about that.
So having said that, at this point, I'll make a motion to amend our previous motion that we approve the addition of the calendar as proposed, but with only the addition of the September 27th professional day.
Can I make a recommendation for September 13th, which is primary day, which we could do the same training on, and it wouldn't affect students, and it wouldn't affect parents who already have that out.
Okay.
So why can't we do September 13th?
All right.
That was a union discussion.
Yeah,
I think that needs to be looked at with the union as well.
So it came down to time and compensation. So if we did it on September 13th, that means the teachers are working an extra day. Unless we reduce...
It's a no-school day.
Unless we reduce the calendar. I would be all for that.
Well, can we just not make that a PD day? Like we're making, instead of making it whatever the PD, make the 13th the PD day?
So the teachers, I'm just going to use the traditional, I know we have 184 professional development days, so the teachers are in for 184 days. If they came in on September 13th and we didn't change our calendar, that would be day 185.
That's right.
Do we have the ESSER funds to pay them for that day?
When offered pay, so that was our plan back in May.
To that.
That was our plan back in May, was we were offering... When I was involved in the conversations, we had a plan where we used the faculty meeting days, some professional development days, the days that are happening right now, and we calculated the hours, paid out at the contractual rate, and that was our plan in May and June. When school got out in June, that was the plan. Then when this legislation came about, that was when the request for time, and a couple of you were here today, and that message came through was valuing time. So that's what this reduction of 3 days.
The quick answer to the question is the union has not agreed to be here on that day. It's in 2 weeks, and there isn't enough time to do that. That's the answer. It's as simple as that. So I go back to, I'm going to just move forward. So I'm going to make a motion to amend, as I said, to approve the calendar as proposed, but only with the addition for now of the September 27th professional development staff-only day. There weren't any other changes I'm missing if I say that, right? If I just say we approve the 27th, there's not something else on here I'm missing that we're not picking up, right?
We made changes to the end of quarter days, but that's
so then let me rephrase
it.
So let me rephrase my motion. I'm going to make my motion to approve the calendar as presented, but removing the added PD days except for September 27th, and that should cover anything else. Do I have a second? I have a second. Okay, so this is a vote to amend our previous motion, and then we vote again on the motion as amended or original, if you remember how that all works. Okay, so any further discussion? All those in favor on the amended motion to amend, aye? That's unanimous, okay. So now we have to vote on the whole package, which is we would be approving the calendar as presented, but removing all of the added PD days except for the 27th for now.
I just have one more question.
Yeah. So it's the 27th, right? And then, the days that are coming off, well, you tell me because I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
Why don't you do that?
Kathy, I just have one more question.
Yes.
The proposed dates on here, were these run past the union?
Excuse me?
The proposed dates on here, were these run past the union?
Yes.
They were?
Yes.
And was primary day floated to them?
We discussed it so briefly. They never said no, but it was not preferred.
Okay.
Not preferred, but it wasn't a no, we won't. It was not preferred. But you would have to, as Mike said, pay
No, I
the
get
entire
that, yeah.
pay, and then we'd be looking at pay later in the year, and I don't know that we have the funds for that, for both of those things, unless you cut a day off at the end of the year.
Kathy, can you confirm the dates that we are removing as of right now are
We're
January?
removing January 11th and March
March
13th.
March 13th or 8th?
Hold on. January 11th, excuse me, and March 8th. I'm sorry, March 8th.
So we would be making a one-day change for now, with the understanding that we may very well have to come back and revisit this and adopt it as proposed, but we'll have a little time to get a little more information and explore options. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of discussion on that one.
And a
Thank
lot
you.
of work we've got to do, but you would like me back next Tuesday to let you know what we have discovered.
What we know from there, yes.
I'll bring Jody with me because she certainly has all of that knowledge as well.
And a clarifying question.
Yes.
When I send out this updated calendar, how would you like it worded as far as additional changes may be necessary?
I would say that there is a proposal that we are still working on where we may need to add the other days, but the school committee is exploring other options, and we'll be voting on that at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Mike, could you send that out tomorrow just so that parents have that sooner rather than later? Thank you.
So next we have a school committee member appointment to the Jamestown contract negotiating team. One thing I just want to make a point of is we're hoping to have a meeting with Jamestown before the town council would be appointing our new member, so that's why this is urgent to do tonight. We can certainly revisit that if the new member is interested in being on that negotiating team and the school committee wants to make a change. But for now, we want to send two people to talk to the folks at Jamestown, and it would most likely be before the town council has made that appointment. So do we have anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to nominate Greg Glasbog, and the reason is because, and I know it's not ideal because he is leaving. He is not running again. Jen Lima is already on the committee. The other person would be Lisa, who is also leaving and not going to be here. And unfortunately, I have a work commitment that is going to take me out of town for 6 weeks. This contract needs to be started now, and there is no way that I can sit in on those meetings. So at that point, I would nominate Greg, knowing that when the next person gets appointed by the town council, that we will revisit this and maybe swap them out if that person is willing to be the Jamestown rep.
So, and I'll tell you, I very specifically didn't ask to have this appointment for the reason you all discussed, which is that, I am not running for re-election, and I really think it's something that needs to be looked at by a school committee member who'll be here longer than I'm going to be on this committee. We've got to keep these negotiations moving. It's very important, and I want to make sure that we're treating Jamestown fairly. So I'm willing to do that. It's a time commitment for me to add to a lot of other things I'm doing, but I'll make it work. Was that a motion? So I have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. So I will do it. So any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. I should vote no. Any opposed? I get drafted, passed unanimously. No offense to the Jamestown folks. I'm just trying to, hand things off to other people. Next is unfinished business. We have the 2022-23 school budget, which has a item Mr. Waterman will talk about, which is a adjustment to that budget to potentially approve an additional section at Stony Lane. So, Mr. Waterman, actually, let's do a motion to approve first. If we get a motion to approve, a motion. Ms. Hildebrand, second from Ms. Lima. Mr. Waterman?
So due to a sudden increase in enrollment of kindergartners in the Stony Lane district, at one point we were looking at having to transport 12 Stony Lane students, kindergarten students specifically, to other schools. We were approaching a capacity limitation across the district we're allowed to have an average of 18 kindergarten students, and we were a couple weeks ago, we were a handful of students away. So this additional section will allow us to bring those Stony Lane kids back to Stony Lane, reduce kids from, we also had overflow out of Hamilton. So some of the Hamilton overflow Ks were heading up to Forest Park. So this will at least bring them a little bit closer to shorten their trip.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
Can you say that one more time? So the children that were at Hamilton that we were originally thinking were going to have to go to Forest Park,
we can bring them a little bit closer.
Will now go to Stony Lane instead of Hamilton. Okay. Do you have a teacher already for that position? Okay. So we already have a kindergarten teacher waiting in the wings. Okay.
Okay, so any other questions? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Summer construction bond update.
So the construction update. So the first project I want to talk about is right here at the high school. This summer we continued on the progress of the rollout of the air conditioning. Throughout the summer we've been able to expand our air conditioning coverage from the second and third floors. And when you walk out tonight, you might see some open ceiling tiles. You'll see that they have begun to add them to the first floor. There are a few areas that did not get included in this round, and we'll look to complete those next summer. Due to supply chain issues, the trim pieces, those are set to ship out Thursday, and so those will be installed in the upcoming weeks. And on primary day, there's going to be a crane here to put the last large piece of infrastructure on the roof, and we expect the air conditioning, if needed, to be rolling in here by the end of September. Second project is Quinesta Elementary, and I'm happy to announce that the rooftop units at Quinesta have been replaced, and we have much improved dehumidification and air conditioning for our warmer months. I'd like to thank Bob Correnti, our Director of Facilities, for his leadership in seeing these two projects through. These were very large projects to get completed in a short window. I'd also like to thank our ABM group, that's our custodial group, who's working tirelessly to have all of our buildings, but yesterday morning I was at Quinesta Elementary and the large open areas were wide open, and by the end of the day, all of the equipment, all the desks, partitions, everything that was being stored in the gymnasium and cafeteria had been brought out, and they had started setting up the classrooms and were cleaning all the stuff from the summer. So teachers are able to get in there and start setting up their classrooms. So that's great news. The painting project out at the stadium that was approved in the spring is more than halfway complete, and weather permitting, that project will wrap up in the next couple of weeks. And the resurfacing of the gym floors here at the high school, the large gym needs one more coat, which it'll get tomorrow, so it will be ready for Tuesday. And the small gym, the back gym, depending on who you are, you call it one or the other, that will be done either at Thanksgiving or winter break. So those projects are well on their way.
Thank you. So we don't have any policies, new business reports. Just one item I have to mention. We received correspondence from the town requesting an update from the school committee on investigative reports. We did not receive that in time to put it on our agenda this evening, so we're going to revisit that. We'll get back to the town as quickly as we can with it on an agenda, so we're not going to discuss that this evening. Financial reports in your packet are financial reports for June. Those are the bank reconciliations and general reconciliations. To the comment, just in general, regarding transparency and things like that, our reconciliations are completely available to both the town, both to any member that wants to look at our agenda this evening. The town finance manager is able to see all of our financial data, maybe not a day-to-day update of our financial data, but the town has any reports and anything that they need to sign off on anything with respect to the school department. And that has always been the case. And the auditors have also made it clear that they did not have any issues with what they have. So that's the answer there. So those reports are right here for you to take a look at this evening. Also, personnel reports for the multitude of assignments and reassignments and everything that happened over the summer and as the school year starts to take place. Any questions on those?
We may have the same question. I see we have a list of vacant positions, and they're more than a handful. I know we're probably not struggling as much as many other districts, and that is in the news right now, but I'm wondering what the continued plan is to fill these vacancies. Was that your question?
I'm trying to peek at your screen right now. Which one?
Vacant positions.
Was that the one after the last job
Yes.
fair? So that was from the June job fair. And
There's no date on it.
if it's a lengthy...
After June 15th.
Yes, so many of those positions have already been filled. There was another job, and I always use the wrong word, job fair, job placement.
Yep.
There was another one in August which creates positions as people move, as people take other positions over the summer. So we're in very good shape. We do have a couple areas, particularly school psychologists, social work, where we have 0 applicants. Or we have 1 applicant and they don't have the certification. So as far as classroom teaching positions, we're in real strong shape. Now, we do get resignations regularly. TAs, we have turnover. But I've signed a lot of new hire paperwork over the past 3 weeks. So I know Brian Lally and HR, they are working nonstop to fill these positions. I know as we get a resignation, we post. I know the principals are even if they have if they interviewed a grade 3 a couple weeks ago and a grade 2 opens up and they think that person might be a strong candidate, if their number 2 is a strong candidate, they're reaching out, encouraging those folks to apply, and we are turning those around as quickly as possible. So as far as classroom teachers are concerned, I think we're in good shape. We could certainly use, we even looked at going out to contract for some services for mental health, and they don't have the people to provide to us. So that area is a struggle. We're hoping we're going to repost the position. So the posting never came down, but we're going to take it down and then repost it so it goes back up to the top. So we're hoping somebody, a teacher in another district or a school psych in another district may get an assignment or a placement they're not happy with and think, hey, now's a great time to change and come down to North Kingstown. So we will be doing that in the upcoming days to bring it to the top.
Okay, yeah, I think that one in particular is definitely a concern. That's the school psychologist for DMS and
Whitford.
And it's split?
It's split.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would be great if you can kind of continue to keep us updated on that one, because that is definitely a concern.
Certainly.
Thanks.
That's my question too. But I did also, because that kind of leads into, one thing Mike was right about this morning at the convocation, they were showing the new teachers and the new TAs, and there were some that they had literally just hired the day before. They didn't even have their picture up there. So they definitely are rolling people in for that. But I think the openings here in the mental health positions, and Mike's touching on the lack of it, kind of leads to what Jenny had said a couple weeks ago when we talked about the ESSER and the ESS contract, is we really need to start putting a plan in place now for these positions that we can't even fill. Regular positions, let alone those. So.
Yeah, so our social work position, we anticipate to be a challenge because it's a 1 year only because it's funded through ESSER. The school psych position is not a 1 year only. It's not grant funded. This is a permanent position. It's not a new position. And
yeah, I just wanted to
so
make
that
sure.
goes back to, though, some issues with the old superintendent not taking on students when Mrs. Monica wanted to take them on, to help cycle them through as well. So, which is super frustrating from my standpoint, that Rick has a program that you can,
student teachers, you mean, kind of like whatever the school's like.
Right, and she was willing to supervise them, and I don't know if that ever happened last year or the year before when he said it would. So I don't know if we reach out to those programs and see what's available, or if there's anything that
Kathy, do you have something to add?
My office oversees all student teacher placements. They come through us, and nothing has come from the school psych program this spring, summer, or fall. It's been all classroom, special education people, and we've, in every single case, filled every single request. So we're joyfully accepting student teachers, but there was nothing from URI Psych for an intern this year. Is that what you were referring to?
No, there's a specific program at RIC that
nothing from Rick either.
That you had to pay a stipend.
That
Previously
was
they
the
did
URI
not.
program as well for years, that there was a stipend paid, to the students. So that has not come across our desk. But I hear you. We should do it because it's worth having that intern and get to know our school and hire the person. Absolutely. In the past, she had, right? Yeah. Okay. I will absolutely ask her if she knows anybody in the pipeline.
Okay, thank you. Then if we're done with the job assignments, then we've reached the end of the agenda, and I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. I have 3 motions. Let's pick one. I'll give that one to Ms. Lima. Do I have a second? I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming this evening.